सेकंड। तमाम साथियों को या अली मदद। Thank you so much everyone for joining today. May Maulay Mehraban be with us. We have an amazing session in front of us. There is a little background to this session, but let's start with the holy name of the Maulay Zaman, Nur Maulana Shah Karim Al-Saini Hazir Imam. Ya Maulay Mehraban Madad Farma. Ya Maulay Mehraban Madad Farma. Ya Maula Tawfiq Taid Himmat wa Yari. Tawfiq Taid Himmat wa Yari Maula. या मौला हम गरीबों की मदद फरमा मौला। या मौला अपने नूर से हमारी मदद फरमा मौला। या मौला हमारे करीब आ जा मौला, और करीब आ जा मौला। अपना दस्त से मुबारक हम गरीबों के कंधों पर रख मौला। या मौला मेहरबान अपने नूर से हमारी हिदायत फरमा मौला। या मौला मेहरबान रहम कर, करम कर, फजल कर मौला। रहम कर मौला, रहम कर मौला। तमाम साथियों को एक बार फिर या अली मदद। We have a subject which I was believed covered by other scholars. Within those examples, parables, and allegories from some of the Quranic ayat, some ayat of the Quran are visible, clear, and requires no ta'wil. For example, when Allah says, pray, that ayat does not require any ta'wil. It is the amr and it is the law that reader, a mu'min, should and must follow, or be good to others. A simple command that must be followed. But then there are ayat which are given in parables, in allegories, as examples, which require very much ta'wil and detailed understanding. So as you can see, the name of this chapter, the subject is the parables and allegories, unveiling the batini tawilat of various parables of the wise Quran. How can one understand these parables and allegories? When The Quran is the book of guidance for those who read the Quran. But the Tawil and the Batini meanings are for those who are part of the Jamaat with the Imam-e-Zaman, and it is the Imam-e-Zaman who with his Nur shed light on these parables and allegories. It is with him and him only that one is able to understand the detailed meanings of such an ayat. And there are many, many ayat like that. Why can all of those who read Quran are not able to understand Quran? Why can they not do that? What is the reason that Al-Zahir or even amongst the Al-Batin sometimes are not able to understand the ilme tawil, are not able to interpret the batin or unveil the batin of some of those ayat? What is the reason for that? And the reason is that they have lost the ilm of the Qiyamah. They have lost the ilm of the Qiyamah, and therefore they have lost the ilm tawil. What it means is those who does not have the ilm of the imams of the time of Qiyamah, or those who does not have ilm of the tawil through imams, they will not be able to give the batini understanding of those ayat. In Surah 27, ayat number 66, Allah speak of those individuals. Now, they have no knowledge, they have no ilm of the hereafter, of the Qiyamah, of the Akhirat. Now, they are in doubt about it because they don't have any ilm of the Qiyamah, ilm of Tawil. Then they are always in the doubt about those ayat, as they are blind to it, because they are not able to see it. They are not able to see the meaning in those words. It is more like that they are blind to it, because they are not able to see it. Physically, they are not blind with these eyes, but they are blind with the eye of the heart, eye of the iman, and eye of the intellect. How did they become blind? Here, I would like to present a scenario in which the people with eye and eyesight are not able to see. And I will explain this in English and Gujarati both, so everyone can understand. Right now, you can see it's light outside. Wherever you are, you probably have a light turned on in your home, wherever you may be, and you have a good eye and eyesight. But if you turn off the light, you will not be able to see anything in front of you. That is the example of those who does not have the light of the Nur, the light of the guidance of the Imam, even though they have eyes. Still, due to the darkness, lack of the light and the Nur and the guidance from the Imam, they will not be able to see. They will not be able to see even if they have a very good eyesight. Because it is dark, they are not able to see. So we understand it is the ilm of the Imam, the Nur of the Imam, and the guidance of the Imam which shed light on those parables and allegories in the Quran, and that is the only way one can see the batin and the interpretation and the understanding of those verses. Without that, they are blind to it. અહીંયા પર જે બહુ જ ઇમ્પોર્ટન્ટ વાત કરવી હતી ને સમજાવવાની વાત હતી ઈ હતી કે જ્યારે ખુદા કહે છે કે એ લોકો આંધળા છે. શું કામે કે એ લોકો અગર ઇલ્મ નથી, કેનો ઇલ્મ નથી? ક્યામતનો ઇલ્મ નથી, આખરતનો ઇલ્મ નથી, અને એ લોકો ડાઉટમાં છે. શું કામે કે આંખું હોવા છતાં ઇમામના નૂરથી દૂરી, ઇમામના ઇલ્મથી નાઆશનાઈ અને ઇમામની ગાઈડન્સથી પાછળ રહી જવાની વજહથી હવે એ લોકોના માટે આંખ હોવાના બાવજૂદ અંધારું છે. શું કામે કે આંખ તો છે લેકિન રોશની નથી ઇમામના નૂરની, ઇમામના ઇલ્મની અને ઇમામની દોડવણીની. એના માટે જ આ ગરીબ અને નાચીઝ શરૂમાં મોલાથી દુઆ કરે છે કે યા મોલા તું પોતાના નૂરથી અમારી દોરવણી કરજે તાકે તારા નૂરની રોશનીમાં અમે જોઈ શકીએ, અમારી આંખો કામ કરે ને અમે વાંચી શકીએ કે શું લખેલું છે અને જોઈ શકીએ કે એનો મતલબ શું થાય છે. નકર આ આંખો કાંઈ કામ નહીં કરે અગર ઇમામના નૂરની રોશની આપણા ઘર ના હોય. તો આ બહુ જ ઇમ્પોર્ટન્ટ હતું કે આપણે આ વાતને સમજીએ કે કોઈ શા માટે કુરાનના કોઈ આયત અને અલ્ફાઝની તાવીલ નથી કરી શકતો. શું કામે કે એના ઘર આંખું હોવા છતાં ઇમામના નૂરની રોશની નથી. તો કેમ જોવે, કેમ સમજે? તો એ આ આંખથી આંધળો નહીં, પોતાના દિલની આંખોથી આંધળો છે, પોતાની અક્કલની આંખોથી આંધળો છે અને એ જોઈ નથી શકતો. Let's look at this farman so we may understand how and why those who follow the Imam are able to see things which others are not able to see. Here, the important part is that one must see these things in the light of the nur of the Imam. That is the most important part here. Without his nur and without the light of his nur, one will not be able to see. Please recite the Holy Salawat, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. It is important that in the learning parts of the Quran, you must clearly understand the meaning. If you recite parts of the Quran, certain words must represent to you a concept. If you study the Quran Sharif, this concept will become well known to you and through you to the Jamaat at large. This takes many years of study. I do not want you to think that this can be learned easily or without hard work. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. આપણે જોયું અહીંયા એક ક્લિયર ઇમામનો ફરમાન અને ડાયરેક્શન છે કે જ્યારે જ્યારે તમે કુરાનની તરફ જોવો અને એના અંદર તમે કાંઈ વાંચો તો કોઈ અલ્ફાઝ એવા હશે કે જ્યારે તમે એને વાંચશો તો એના અંદરથી એક કોન્સેપ્ટ અસૂલે દીન બારે આવશે અને તમને ઈ દેખાશે અને તમને ઈ વાત સમજમાં આવશે અને તમને ઈ વાત સમજમાં આવી જોઈએ. શું કામે સમજમાં આવી જોઈએ? શું કામે કે તમે ઈ કુરાનના વર્ડને, ઈ કુરાનની આયતને ઇમામના નૂરની રોશનીમાં, ઇમામના ઇલ્મના સાથે, ઇમામની દોરવણીના સાથે જોયું અને વાંચ્યું. So if you recite the parts of the Quran, certain words must represent to you a concept. And today's subject, we will shed some light on those certain words which must represent a concept. Here we must understand that those words sometimes are such a word that has one or multiple meanings, translation of it. But when it comes to the understanding, the batini meaning, it is only you who read those verses with the guidance, with the light and with the ilm of the Imam would be very clear to you without any doubt. And that is important. And we will read a Furman in a minute where Imam says those interpretation, those meanings are only and only for our Jamaat. So the first parable which we will take today with your prayers, and we ask Mola Bapa to continue to shine his nur, his light on us Garib, so we may be able to see what he wants us to see. Because without his light, without his nur, doesn't matter how much eye and eyesight we have, we will not be able to see. So it is important to keep in mind, it is only through him one can see and understand and then give the understanding to the Jamaat. Parable number 1, not being able to enter into the paradise until the camel passes through the eye of needle. બધાથી પહેલે જે આપણે મિસાલ ઉપાડી કે જ્યાં તક એક ઊંટ સુઈના નાકામાંથી ના ગુજરી જાય તે લોકો જન્નતમાં દાખલ નહીં થઈ શકશે. Is this parable a possibility or is it impossible for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle? Let's think about it together for a second. Is it possible for an animal as large as camel can pass through the eye of the needle? Any logical person will tell you, as is the size of the camel, the huge animal cannot pass through the eye of the needle. But Allah says, until the camel passes through the eye of the needle, meaning there is a possibility. There is a possibility that camel does go through the eye of the needle, and then, because Allah uses the word until then, when the camel does pass through the eye of the needle, then they will be able to enter into the paradise. Here, some of the meaning and understanding is the ego of the human. Ego of the human is such a huge animal in the example of the camel, that if you have the ego as big as a camel, then with that ego, you will not be able to enter into the heaven, because it would be impossible, as you will not be able to go through the eye of the needle. So if someone asks us, how do we enter into the heaven. You, with this understanding, will be easily able to answer that we have to let go of our ego, number one. Let go of the I, me, maru, maru, maru. We must crash that ego into such a small particles like a thread, a thin rope like thread. Then that thread, that particle, the soul of the human will be able to pass through the needle eye and will be able to enter the paradise. Let's look at the ayat and then remember our dais, our hujjatan, our arifins. They have talked about this ayat and have given multiple, not one, but multiple interpretations, understanding, tawilat of this ayat. And inshallah, we will also be able to understand the interpretation, the tawil of this ayat. I have already demonstrated in clear words how can we do that. So let's look at the ayat. The gates of heaven will not be open to those who rejects our ayat and arrogantly rejects them. Here I would like to draw your attention that those who rejects Allah's ayat, what is the meaning of ayat? Is it we are talking about the verses in the Quran? If this was the verses in the Quran, have you ever seen anyone who reads the Quran rejects or refuse or not accept the words of the Quran? If you are a man of logic, you will answer no. Because those who do read the Quran, they never reject the ayat. Here, the proof that this word ayat was not used for the words, but for the miracles, signs. Signs of Allah. The word ayat is used for the Saibe Zaman. The word ayat is used as the miracle, the Saibe Zaman, the Imame Zaman. And you can see, and let me show you, arrogantly rejects them. The word them shows that it is not the returned verses in the Quran, but the Imams. In the first line, word the gates of the heaven. Gates of the heaven shows that Imams, not one Imam, but the Imams. Imams are the gates to the paradise. And those who rejects the Imam arrogantly rejects them, then they will not be able to enter into paradise till the camel passes through the eye of the needle, until they break their ego. And why do they not accept the Imam? Because their ego is telling them that Imam is a human just like me. And they rejects the nur in the Imam and the position of the Imam. Arrogantly, because they do not have the ilm, nor they have the tawil, understanding of the Quranic verses. So arrogantly, they reject the Imams, and therefore they reject them completely by saying, I am better than Imam, or I am equal to Imam, Nozbillah. And their ego is as big as camel. And now they cannot go through the eye of the needle, and therefore they are not able to enter into the paradise, because they must enter into the paradise through Imams. So till the camel passes through the eye of the needle, they would not enter the paradise. And this is how we punish the guilty. This is their punishment for saying that Imam is a human like me. I am better or equal to the Imam, and that is their huge mistake. And as a punishment, their ego becomes so big. As an example of the big animal camel, that they are not able to pass through Imam, they are not able to accept the Imam, and now they are stuck outside the paradise and not able to enter the paradise. Let me show you this Farman. So you may believe that it is possible for those who have the ilm of the Imam, who believe in the Imam, who has the light and the guidance of the Imam, then they are able to give the meaning of this ayat. Otherwise, someone could challenge, how can one give the tawil of an ayat? Here is the Farman in front of you. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. First, let me remind you that for all murids of the Imam, wherever they are, whether they are from Central Asia, from India, from Pakistan, from Western world, the fundamental principle is the recognition of the Imam of the time. It is he, the Imam, it is he who guides the Jamaat in the interpretation of its faith. It is he who interprets the faith, and it is he who gives the guidance to the Jamaat in the interpretation of its faith at any time during its lifetime. Na sirf imam ne orkha wara mate, imam ni dorwani, imam no ilm અને imam na nur ni રોશની છે, બલકે imam એ લોકો માટે તાવીલ કરીને દેખાડે છે અને એ લોકોને દોરવણી આપે છે તાવીલ કરવા માટે. હું પાછો અહીંયા ફરમાનને ગુજરાતીમાં તમારા માટે વાંચીને દેખાડું કે તમે જ્યાં પર બી છો તમે ઇમામને ઓળખો અને ઇમામ જ છે જે તમારા માટે તાવીલ કરે છે અને તમને દોરવણી આપે છે તાવીલ કરવા માટે. પોતાની ઇમામતના દોરાનમાં. It's very clear farman of the Imam-e-Zaman. How can one do? Here, the meaning of this farman is those who believe in the Imam and those who recognize the Imam of the time. Those who recognize the Imam of the time. Then Imam interprets the faith for them and guides the Jamaat in the interpretation of his faith at any time during his lifetime. Here, there are many interpretation of the camel and the eye of the needle. And as you can see, whomever he wish to guide, he guides. Whomever he wish to give ilm, he gives. It is only through the recognition of the Imam that the door of the bliss of the both worlds, the eternal salvation, can be opened. As the ayat we read above says, those who deny our ayat and scorn, rejects them. Whoever ignore and deny the Imam and rejects the ayat, the miracle, the sign, the Imam, for them the gates of the heaven will not be opened, nor they will be able to enter into the paradise until the camel goes through the needle's eyes. જ્યાં તક એ લોકોનો ઈગો મોટો છે એ લોકો પેરાડાઇઝમાં દાખલ નહીં થઈ શકશે. So here the camel represent an animal, large animal, which is not possible for it to go through the eye of the needle until one crushes the ego completely and becomes particle, becomes thin and becomes nothing, like a thin air or a thin rope. like a thread, then one will be able to enter into the paradise. So here I will share this tawilat with you, and you will be able to read again and again that what was the reason for Iblis. What are the reason for those who do not believe in the Imam? How will they be stuck outside the paradise? And the reasons are that they thought of themselves as the bigger, better person than the Imam. Let's take the example of Iblis. He said, I will not prostrate to Adam as I am better and bigger. I am higher than Adam. Adam is merely a human. Those today who do not believe in the Imam, period, because they see the Imam as a human, merely a human, and they are saying by their action, by default, they are saying, hey, he's human just like me. He's no better than me. Matter of fact, I may be even better than him, like Iblis said. God forbid, Khuda na khasta, Nauzbillah, ક્યારે આપણા દિલમાં, આપણા ખ્યાલમાં, આપણી જબાન પર આ વાત ના આવે કે ઇમામ તો આપણા જેવો માણસ છે. જ્યારે તમારા દિલમાં આ વાત આવશે તો તમારો ઈગો એટલો મોટો થઈ જશે જેવી રીતે કેમલ છે, એક ઊંટ છે. હવે તમે કેમ આ જન્નતમાં દાખલ થાઓ? Your ego will become such a large animal that you will not be able to enter into the heaven because of your ego, your arrogance will stop you from entering into the heaven because you compared yourself. So here there are two things. One, you compared yourself to the Imam, that I am a human and he's a human. That is not a good comparison. As Imam is the Noor-e-Ilahi and we are the dust. There is no comparison. Second, by ignorantly, in our ignorance, we say I am better than Imam. That builds your ego so high, so huge, that you will not be able to enter into the paradise. So those who disobey the Imam of the time, they will not be able to enter into the paradise due to their own ego, as an example of the camel. But that ego can be crushed. If someone says, I am nobody, I am nothing, then and then only, if you obey the Imam of the time, then they will be able to enter into the paradise, as the Imams are the gates of the paradise. And through him and through him only, one could enter into the paradise. There are more tawilat again and again here in front of you, how one, due to their arrogance, are stopped at the gates of the heaven. and those gates will not open for them because they have not accepted. They have not accepted the ayat of Allah, the imams of the time. And now here, if this camel, this ego, somehow can be broken, can be destroyed, can be turned into the particles, then that camel can easily pass through the eye of the needle, because now it is in the shape of the particle, like a thread goes through the eye of the needle easily. And I will share all of this tawilat with you in a PDF form so you can read for yourself. And I would encourage you to read for yourself, because just listening and not doing personal search is not right and it's not good. We must do our own due diligence and personal search. The second tawil and the parable we have is the parable of mosquito. The example of the mosquito and what is about it, or about it, I'm sorry, about it. Allah does not shy from drawing comparison, even with something as small as mosquito, bahuza, or like that. In the Quran, in Surah 2, ayat 26, Allah gives a parable, an example of a mosquito, by saying, I do not shy away from giving an example as small as mosquito, or even something smaller or likeness of mosquito. The believers know it is truth from their Lord, but the disbeliever says, what does God mean by such a comparison? When Allah gives the example of the mosquito, and those who understand the parables, understand the meaning of this parable, understand the interpretation, the batin of these parables, they understand what Allah is saying in this example without any question. But then those who do not believe in those parables, because they do not understand those parables, because they are not able to see the meaning of those parables, says, what does Allah mean by this? What does Allah mean by this? And they reject the parable. In return, they reject the ayat and they reject the tawil in it. So first of all, let's talk about mosquito. What does mosquito do? Mosquito makes that buzzing sound. The sound of the two wings flying. Sound. The buzzing sound. And Allah giving correctly and most perfectly the symbol of mosquito. When do we hear the sound of mosquito clearly? When there is a quietness, number one. When there is really quiet, we hear this buzzing sound of mosquito. When else do we hear the sound of mosquito? When mosquito is very close to our ears. આપણે મસ્કીટોની અવાજ ક્યારે સાંભળે છે? મસ્કીટો શું કરે છે? એક બઝિંગ સાઉન્ડ પેદા કરે છે. એના વિંગ્સ થી એક સાઉન્ડ પેદા કરે છે, a buzzing sound. આ સાઉન્ડ આપણે ક્યારે સાંભળે છે? નંબર 1, જ્યારે ખામોશી હોય છે. નંબર 2, જ્યારે ઈ આપણા એકદમ કાનના બાજુમાં આવી જાય ત્યારે આપણે એનો બઝિંગ સાઉન્ડ સાંભળે છે. ને આ એક એવી નિશાની છે, એવી એક સમજ છે કે જે ખુદાએ બિલકુલ સહી તરાસી અને પરફેક્ટલી મુકમ્મલ તौर માથે આપણને સમજાવી છે. હવે આની આપણે તાવીલના માથે આવીએ. પહેલે આપણે થોડું શું એને આ આયતને સમજીએ છીએ ને પછી એની પૂરી તાવીલને સમજવાની કોશિશ કરવાના. આમાં તમે જોવો છો કે 3 આયતોના રેફરન્સ આપેલા છે ને એમાં થોડા વર્ડ બ્લુ ના અંદર હાઇલાઇટ કરવામાં આવ્યા છે. Give those who believe and do good the news that they will have gardens graced with flowing streams. Whenever they are given sentence from the fruit of those gardens, they will say, we have been given this before because they were provided with something like it. They will have pure spouses and there they will stay. In this ayat, the highlighted part is that whenever they will be given this reward, they will say that we have been given this reward before. We remember hearing, seeing, and understand this sound before. Whatever is been given to us, we understand because we had given something like this in the example before. The second ayat goes like this: Allah does not shy from drawing comparison even with something as small as mosquito bahuza or like that. The believers know it is the fact, the right example from their Lord. But the disbelievers say, what does God mean by such a comparison? Through it is he makes many go astray and leads many to the right path. By giving this example, those who believe, he put them on the right path. Those who do not believe, he puts them away from the right path. But it is only the rebels he makes go astray. And those who don't believe, he will put them out of the Sirat al-Mustaqim. Here the key word was, the believers know it is the fact, the right example from with their Lord. The example of mosquito is the most correct and most perfect example Allah have used. For whom? Those who can see the tawil understanding of it. those who break Allah's covenant after it is confirmed, and who center what Allah has ordered to be joined and do mischief on earth, those cause loss to themselves. Once you have believed in him, and then if you go the other way, then it is your loss and your loss only. So here in this ayat, there are three ways Allah explaining to us the meaning of this parable. Number one, the sound of the mosquito is given to you so you may remember. When did you hear this sound before? When your batin will open, there is a sound in your batin which will be similar to the sound of the buzzing of a mosquito. And I will explain that in a minute. And that is the correct example. And once you hear it, once you believe it, and then if you go away from it, then the punishment or the loss is a great loss for those who had believed it and then moved out of it, away from it. I will explain this in a minute. Here, there are two easy tawilat for the listeners. Easy tawilat for the listener. Mosquito, bauza. The example of the mosquito is hidden in the sound of the mosquito and the size of the mosquito. How small this mosquito is and how much noise and what kind of noise does it make, the sound that it makes. Very small buzzing sound only can be heard if it's close enough. AZIZ example આપવામાં આવી છે. એની મિસાલ એવી છે કે તમે ત્યારે સાંભળશો જ્યારે એકદમ ખામોશી હશે અને જ્યારે ઈ સાઉન્ડ તમારા કાનના એકદમ બાજુમાં હશે ત્યારે તમે ઈ સાઉન્ડ સાંભળી શકશો. There are two, maybe even more, tawilat and understanding. And if we understand the Quran right, Quran is a book of guidance and spiritual ilm. Because Quran is a book of guidance, then through this example, Allah is guiding us. Number one, the low sound of ilm. Low sound of the ilm is an example of the sound of a mosquito, which with time becomes loud and clear. When the very first time we hear the true ilm, and let me make a very clear understanding. The ilm, which is the true ilm of the Imam, starts very low, with a low sound. It does not come like a bombardment, loud sound. And those ilm, which is very loud, mega sound, that is not the true ilm of the Imam. The mega sound, the ilm of the Imam comes very quietly with a low sound. But with the time, it takes place in your heart, and then it becomes little louder, little more louder, little more louder, and louder and louder. Just like a sound of mosquito, the buzzing sound, very low sound from far away. And then as it comes closer and closer to your ear, it becomes louder and louder and louder. That is the example of the true ilm of the Imam. The true ilm of the Imam only can be heard if you are paying attention, because the sound of the true ilm of the Imam is very low. If you're not paying attention, if you're not coming close to it, you will not be able to hear, nor you will be able to understand. Amongst all of the ilm in the world, the loud, mega loud sound that you hear, if it's a mega sound, it's not the ilm of the Imam. Ilm of the Imam is it comes with a very low sound, and is only can be heard by the hearts which pay attention. Then that ilm will take place in your heart. It will eventually will come louder and clear to you. That is the example of mosquitoes buzzing sound. So number one, the low sound of ilm, which with time becomes loud and clear. Second, low sound of angel or angels, which with time becomes loud and clear. Now the second will take a little bit more example and understanding, explanation. When we sit in the ibadat, pay attention to this, my friends. When we sit in the ibadat, and if our heart and mind is silent, no worldly thoughts, then you will hear the very low sound of the angels. And then if you pay attention, it will come little louder and little clear to you. Initially, it has been reported that Mu'mineen hear a low sound of the angels in the example of the sound of the wings of the mosquito. A buzzing sound. Those of you who are old enough to remember the old transit radio and the short wave on the radio, when you will tune the radio, it will go, and then finally when it is connected correctly, you will be able to hear the announcer on the radio. The low buzzing sound of the short waves. Those of you who are old enough to remember the shortwave radio will understand the example. So when you are tuning the radio, it will make the sound, and then finally will tune to the channel, and you will be able to hear the clear sound of the announcer on the radio. That is the example of the angels. When in your ibadat, when your mind is clear, the sounds are low, you will hear that buzzing sound of the angels, of your Isme Azam. And with the time, if you pay attention, then it will become loud and clear to you. So you notice Nachis have written here that those are the tawil and maybe more tawil. Matter of fact, there are many more tawilat. And one of the other tawil besides those two tawil is given by our Pir Nasir Khusro, that this symbolize of the weak, small body of the mosquito and the low sound of the buzzing sound of the mosquito. Pir Nasir Khusro has given another tawil of that. That even though mosquito is such a small creature, but the power of his wings are so great, so fast, that he is able to not only make the sound, but he is able to catch your attention. Even sometime if you don't see the mosquito, because of such a small body, you still are able to hear him. The tawil and the understanding behind that is that there is a time when you don't see, don't understand the ilm of the imam. The ilm of the imam or the sound of the angels, even if you don't see it. But it has so much power that it makes that buzzing sound in the hope that you will pay attention and you will be able to hear it. You will be able to hear it. And the negative side of it, there is another tawil of the mosquito. The mosquito is made with the same soul as any other creature, in the example of the camel or in the example of the elephant. If you let this sound in your heart, the small sound of ilm, a small sound of tawil, a small sound of the angel in your heart, it will grow in your heart and will become an elephant, a large creature. It will start with a small creature as a mosquito. If you take this ilm tawil, which is an example of the small part of the ilm tawil, and if you put that in your heart, eventually all of those ilm collectively will become an elephant. You will have so much ilm, you will have so much understanding. If you let this angel whisper in your ear, and if you let this angel into your heart, he will become your friend, a huge friend, an example of an elephant. Now, he will be able to talk to you, speak to you, loudly and clearly. And this is how our guys and peer have explained to us that how when Allah gives an example in the Quran as a parable or allegories, do not ignore them. See them in the light of the nur of the Imam. Understand with the tawil and the ilm and the guidance of the Imam. So you may be able to take advantage of it, benefit from it. And you will be able to say, oh, when your angel will speak to you, you say, I have heard this sound before. This is the example of the sound of the wings of the mosquito. I remember this example before. We have been given this before. We have given this understanding before. Otherwise, let me tell you where we will lose. We will think that is a physical mosquito and we will not able to hear. We're going to push that sound of the angel away in our ibadat, in our heart, and we will not let the sound take place in our heart. We will not give permission to the angel to whisper into our ear, into our heart, and we will lose. Because this is not about a mosquito, but it is about the sound of the ilm of the Imam. It is sound of the Israfil. When Israfil comes, when the ibadat becomes successful, when angels are descend on you, they will whisper to you in a low sound. If you let that sound into your heart, it will become louder and clear, and now you have a living angel in your heart. And he will whisper to you from within you, which will be a clear instruction, guidance, sound to you. Here are many tawil, and I will read this one, and it looks like we are not able to do all 4 today. We will come back to the other 2 next week. I will share with you what 2 other parables which we were supposed to cover today. So let me read this to you, and then we will end and we will open the floor for questioning. The sound, so there are 2 possible tawil. The first tawil is sound of the ilm, and if you hear the ilm of the Imam, initially it comes in a low sound. It's hard to understand. It's hard to digest. But if you let that ilm of the Imam in you, then eventually the ilm of the Imam will come louder and clear. And the second one was the sound of the angels. By the command of the God, when the time of the personal resurrection comes, by searching of the moment comes, because you were doing the ibadat, you were searching for the light, the nur, the wonders and marvels of the Surah Israfil will start in the example of the sound, the buzzing sound of the mosquito, and your ear will start to ring. The rings of the air will start, the buzzing sound, the sound. because you are searching, and because your Isme Azam is coming complete, you will hear the rings in your ear like a buzzing sound. In the Quranic wisdom, its example is given by the knot, the bauza, and its sound, the buzzing sound of the wings of the mosquito, about which Mullah Ali said, I am the knot whose example God has given in the Quran in the example of a mosquito. This means that the ringing of the air is the beginning of the voice of the Surah Israfil. It is the angels with the nur of Ali which rings in your ear, which speaks to you in your ear with a very low sound of the angels. And it is the spark of the light of the imamat. And that is the beginning of your spiritual journey. What happens if you don't pay attention? What happens if you say, go away? Because you're not understanding what is happening. This is must lesson. So we may take advantage and benefit from it. This voice gradually becomes louder and louder and clearer and clearer, and eventually surrounds the entire universe, so that all people are gathered and present for the judgment of the resurrection as mentioned in the Quran. We are talking about your personal universe, your personal world within you. It will become louder and louder. In the form of the question, Arif-e-Zaman asked, is the melody of Israfil or the voice of Sur, Nakur, heard by the external or internal air? Do we hear from this air or from the air of your heart, your batini air? Answer, it is heard by both this air and this air. Both, because it is very beginning, first stages of the personal resurrection. Gog and Magog, Yajuj and Majuj, come in the form of the particles and eat the wall and the veil of the carnal soul by licking it, which is between the external and the internal senses. Then, for a while or forever, both the external and the internal senses becomes one. It is also a fact that the sur, the nakur of the resurrection, has two aspects, one being related to the subtle body and the other to the spirituality. So I will stop here, and with Imam's help, with his nur and his guidance, we were able to present two tawil of the two ayat from the Quran. One was the camel going through the eye of the needle, and second, the example of the mosquito and the buzzing sound of the mosquito. There are two more that we will cover, and the third parable is the word is like a pure tree, and the fourth is the example of the lamp in Ayah Nur, inshallah. So let me stop here. Now, if you have any comments, any question, please raise your hand So with the discipline, we can take one question at a time. G. Do we have any comments, any question?
There is one, oh no, that isn't a question, sorry. They're all saying thank you. It was a very enlightening ALWAAZ. Thanks for the deeper explanation.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yali Madad, sir.
Please raise your hand when you have a question so other can also ask. Ji Yali Madad.
Sir, ये जो recognition of the imam का वो जो आप फरमान बोले ना, it is who interprets the faith. उसमें है ना सर, like कि हम बोलते हैं recognition of the imam और एक बार हम बोलते हैं recognition of the imam of the time. तो ये same है या different है, कैसा ये समझाइए ना सर प्लीज.
जी, तो यहाँ पर हम ऑफ सब्जेक्ट है. आपका जो क्वेश्चन है वो इमाम शनासी से है. मौला फरमाते हैं कि आप हमेशा अपने इमाम को जाने, लेकिन उसके अंदर ये बात छुपी हुई होती है कि हमेशा जमाने के इमाम को पहचानना. क्योंकि अगर कोई कहता है मैं अली को पहचानता हूं, मैं हुसैन को पहचानता हूं, और कहता है मैं शाह करीम को नहीं पहचानता, तो कोई बात नहीं बनती. यानी कि जरूरी है कि हमेशा जमाने के इमाम को पहचाने, ताकि उसके जरिए से तमाम इमामों को पहचाना जाए. आज का जो हमारा टॉपिक था वो ये था कि जो जमाने के इमाम को पहचानता है उसके लिए इमाम तावीलात बयान करता है और उसको सिखाता है इल्म तावील. ये हमारा सब्जेक्ट था. और ये नुक्ता जो आपने उठाया वो इमाम शनासी के सब्जेक्ट का क्वेश्चन था. बट थैंक यू फॉर आस्किंग. जी जुलेबिया, गो अहेड.
Yali Madad ALWAAZ said,
Yali Madad.
It may not be related to today's topic, but I still want to inquire. If you want to find out whether you're going to, if you're a soul of the dunya or of the hereafter, how can I decide for myself if my soul is prepared for the akhirah?
A very hard question, because only one can answer is you and you only. So you should ask yourself some question. Have I done enough good deeds? Have I done correct understanding and farman bardari? Have I done enough ibadat? Have I followed the Imam's farman in the correct manner? Do I feel more burden and need to ask for the forgiveness of my sin? Or do I feel very calm and clear in myself? Do I feel that if I died today, right now, then I will be one with the Imam without any recommendation from others? Do I feel confident enough to say I have done anything and everything in my hand and in my power to be on the right path? If those questions and the answer are clear, then you would know that you are ready for him. And let me tell you one thing, and this is very important. And we have noticed this, that sometimes we ask and we say, if we are saying with humility and ajizi that I am gunegar, that is perfectly fine, because that is part of your ajizi and humility. But when you speak to Mola Bapa, between you and Mola Bapa, then Mola Bapa, I have asked for the forgiveness of all my sin, and I'm ready to come to you as I feel pure and I feel close to your Nur. That's how you can answer your question. G. Thank you so much. Do we have any question from subject at hand, today's subject?
Nurjahan, I think Nurjan would like to ask. Nurjan, go ahead. Nurjan's iPhone, she put in chat, can I ask you a sawal?
Just go ahead, ask, please. Okay. Anar is also trying to ask something. Nurjan, if you are not ready, we'll go to Anar and
I'm ready, but I can't unmute I can't unmute my.
Okay, now we can hear
you are unmuted now, Nurjan. Go ahead, please.
I tried to okay, all right, 1 minute, okay. Yeah, okay, missionary साहब, याली मदद कैसे आप?
याली मदद.
आप अच्छा, मेरा सवाल ये है, आपने बताया कि बजिंग साउंड होता है जब बंदगी करते हैं, तो मुझे और फीलिंग्स होती बनिस्बत इसके.
ओके, ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं है, तो ये सवाल नहीं है, ये
जस्ट लाइक मैं आपको बताऊं
नहीं, आप अपने रूहानी
अपना थोड़ा सा एक्सपीरियंस बताऊं आप?
नहीं,
अगर
आप ना बताएं,
मुझे कुछ और तरह की वो होती है.
कोई बात नहीं है, आप उसको आपका जाती एक्सपीरियंस समझ के रखें उसको.
हाँ, ठीक है.
और
तो ये साउंड को मैं ट्राई करती हूँ कि मुझे साउंड आएगा, बजिंग साउंड.
ओके, तो आप ट्राई नहीं कर सकते हैं कि ये साउंड आएगा.
जब
आपका
मैंने बहुत कोशिश करती हूँ, बहुत ही कोशिश करती हूँ.
जब आपका बातीन खुलेगा, तब ये साउंड खुद ब खुद आएगा. और यहाँ पर नाचीज ने एक छुपा कर बात की थी कि ये सिर्फ एक या दो बातें हम कर रहे हैं, हालांकि उसके अंदर बहुत ज्यादा और बातें भी हैं. कि जब हमारा बातीन खुलता है, जब हमारा बातीन खुलता है, तो उस वक्त हमें कुछ कुछ आवाजें आने लगती है, और ये आवाज एक रेडियो वेव की तरह होती है, जिस तरह से बजिंग साउंड है शॉर्ट वेव की. यानी कि पहले इस तरह से कोई आवाज आती है, आस्ते आस्ते वो आवाज वाजे होती है, और वो वाजे आवाज हकीकत में हमारे इसमें आजम की आवाज होती है, जो फरिश्ते की शक्ल में होती है, और वो हमारे कान से हमारे दिल में आकर बैठ जाती है. अगर हम उसको इजाजत देते हैं, यानी कि उस पर तवज्जो देते हैं, तो वो आवाज वाजे 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 तर होती जाती है, और वो आस्ते आस्ते हमारा एक जाती मोकल फरिश्ता बन जाता है. फिर वो इसमें आजम, एक जिंदा इसमें आजम हमारे अंदर से हमको तोरवणी देता है, गाइड करता है, जिसको कहीं पर हम इमाम के नूर की रोशनी भी कहते हैं, कहीं पर उसको इसमें आजम भी कहते हैं, कहीं पर उसको फरिश्ता भी कहते हैं, कहीं पर उसको हम अपना जाती मोकल फरिश्ता भी कहते हैं, हमारा कान खुल जाना भी कहते हैं, वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. तो यहाँ पर जो बात हो रही थी वो ये हो रही थी कि हमारे अंदर इतनी खामोशी होनी चाहिए कि हम ये छोटी सी आवाज को सुन सके, क्योंकि जब खामोशी नहीं होती दिल में, शोर शराबा होता है, दुनिया का वसवसा होता है, दूसरी दुनियावी चीजों का शोर होता है तो हम नहीं सुन पाते हैं उसको। इसलिए जरूरी है कि हम उसको खामोशी करें ताकि हम उसको सुन सके और इसके बाद उसको और तवज्जो देकर सुने ताकि वो वाज़े हो जाए हमारे लिए। तो यहाँ पर ये बात हो रही थी। Thank you so much.
Azizba, there is one question in the chat. How many parables and allegories are there in the Quran?
Oh, there are so many, so many, so many. I don't think this Garib and Nachis can count.
Okay, that's fine. Somebody else has actually responded. Every verse in the Quran has a parable. With Mola's
Okay.
blessing, we will get to know them, inshallah. That was the
Right.
reply. So, yeah.
So my reply would be a little bit different. Okay. There are ayat which are clear without parables, which I said it at the very beginning, that there are ayat which are clear without any parables and allegories. Then those are the ayat which requires interpretation because it has parables and allegories. But if we want to see parables, or instead of using the word parable, if we want to see the batin of the ayat, if the question was asked, how many places do we find the interpretation, batin, of the Quran? My answer would be 6,666. Because the answer question was how many parables, then I don't know.
Oh, thank you. That helps. Shirazba, did you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes, please. Otherwise, the comment you just made, that there are certain things in the Quran that don't need explanation. And you gave the example of pray.
Mhm.
Now, surely even the word pray has many interpretations.
Right?
Yeah. So it's not so straightforward. It's not so black and white.
Right.
In my mind.
So, G. So easy answer to your question. Allah is so merciful that He has sent 124,000 prophets, and then Natakins, and then Asasan, and then Hujatan, and then Dayan, and then Arifins. So when Allah say, do good, pray, give zakat, then it is up to the time and age and the place. Those prophets, those Natikins, those Asasans, and those Hujatan, and those Dayan, and those Arifins tells us how to pray, when to pray, how many times to pray, what is the correct method of praying, and all of that. But the farman, the command of prayer does not change. Farman of do good deed does not change. But those Saiban-e-Zaman tells us what are the good deeds for the time and space and the age. You see, if these commands are clear that you must do good deed, how and what and where are taught by the Sahibe-Zaman. That's what I meant. Those are clear signs, commands in the Quran. Then how and when is given to us by the Sahibe-Zaman. And for that, the ayat is Ati'ullah wa Ati'u Rasul wa Ulil Amra Minkum. See, it's so clear, right?
That's clear.
G.
Thank you.
G. You're welcome. Good question. Thank you so much.
Aziz Bhai, there is one question in the chat. Would you want me to read it out?
Please.
What if it's a constant buzzing in the ear at a very high speed, but is very subtle to pay attention to, like you said, shortwave sound at a very high frequency? How can I fine-tune it to connect and listen to the spiritual realm? Just clarify that it's not related to any ear disease.
Okay. All right. So there can be some ear issue, or you have an infection in your ear, and therefore you are having this buzzing sound. I believe, my friend, you have missed the point. The buzzing sound during the ibadat. The point was the buzzing down sound during the ibadat. And because you made a very light point, there can be mosquito issues in your Jamaat Khana, and then we have a problem there because we have mosquitoes in Jamaat Khana. But serious note, we are talking about the buzzing sound of the angels. Buzzing sound like an example of the mosquito sound or the shortwave sound. You cannot do anything about it except one thing. If you wanted to make that sound clear and louder and visible to you, make your heart and mind more quieter. Stop and listen. Pay attention to it. Let your heart open so that sound of angels will come from inside of you, and you will have no doubt in your mind what that sound is. No doubt in your mind what that sound is. And that is the sound we are speaking of here today. G.
Thank you, Aziz Bhai. There is one other question. Is there a parable of a spider? And if so, what is the significance?
So now we are going to the other parable. There is a parable of a spider. So what is a spider? Spider makes web, and spider makes web so fast. The example of the spider in the Quran is the example of the shaitan in the Quran. That as the shaitan make the web of waswasa, doubts in your heart, just like someone throws a whisper in your ear, a gossip, backbiting in your ear, and it becomes so big like a spider web, and so quickly like a spider web. The example of the spider, and this is just one of the tawil, of the doubts and the web of the whisper of the shaitan. G.
Thank you. There is one question from Zulobia Bhai again. She apologizes for going out of topic again, but she's asking, how can one gain full benefit of Laylatul Qadr?
Easy, one word, recognition.
Thank you.
Recognize the Laylatul Qadr, and you will have the benefit of the Laylatul Qadr. If you do not recognize the Laylatul Qadr, how can you take the benefit from the Laylatul Qadr? G.
Thank you. I think Gulzar Bhai has got her hand up again. Gulzar Bhai, do you want to ask again? Go ahead.
Yes. Sir, इसके में ये जो है ना कि 2:26 में कि आपको पहले से पता है कि been given this before, तो वो कैसा पता है सर पहले से? मतलब
हाँ हाँ, बहुत अच्छा सवाल। क्या अभी हमने नहीं सुना कि मस्कीटो की साउंड ऐसी होगी जैसे एंजल्स की आवाज? तो जब एंजल्स की आवाज आएंगी तो आपका दिल में खुशी पैदा होगी, अरे ये बात तो हमको एक दिन अजीज सर ने बताई थी, मुझे तो पता था पहले से ही है। ये बात हो रही है यहाँ पर, ये राज की बातें हैं जी।
Thank you. Another question in the chat. ALWAAZ Sahib, I appreciate the Batini Tawil understanding, but in the physical sense, it is not possible today to ask Imam Zaman directly for his Tawil on Quran. Why rely on older Dai's work for contemporary views and interpretations, or do your own ijtihad for interpretation when we have a living Imam who is present? I'm sorry if it's a bit out of topic again.
Okay, I'm going to just make this question very easy. Question is not that hard. Looks like a lot of words were used. My apology. Let me show you something so you may understand the answer to this. This right here, you see the Farman on your screen? It is he who interprets the faith. It is he who interprets, it is he who guides the Jamaat in the interpretation of his faith at any time during his lifetime. Physically, you don't have a way to get to the Imam. If you try to break into the Eglamont, you will be arrested. But Imam has no limit. We have a limit physically. Imam has no limit. And Imam is clearly telling you that I will interpret and I will guide you. I will guide you in the interpretation of the faith. Let Imam in your heart so he may help you interpret. And in Nachi's earlier few minutes, I spoke about this. Those who believe and have recognized the Imam of the time, they are the one who have recognized the time, and they are the one with the ilm of the Imam and the interpretation, understanding of the batin. See, this question was not that hard.
Thank you. Zinat, go ahead. Zinat's hand is up. Are you able to unmute, Zinat? Shall we go to Khayal Ali first and see whether he's able to unmute? Khayal Ali, you have a question? You have your hand up.
Yes, I do. I have a question. Well, first, actually, thank you, Aziz sir. That was I really enjoyed the session, and I think that we really get to see here, while we see sometimes in our Dai's books that the idea is that every single word of the Quran has hikmat and knowledge, and we have to understand each particular word to understand that. And I think that this type of session has shown us that, and thank you for that. I do have a question. But actually I have a question, but before I do that, I was going to ask you if after my question, if it doesn't take too long, you can also tell us why it is that sometimes the Quran uses terms like the Quran al-Hakim or Quran al-Karim, Quran al-Majid, and if that has anything to do with how we understand the verses of Quran. But as for my question, to go back to the parable of the camel and the gates of heaven and entering paradise. So in light of the fact that we said that how each word might have a tawil or a particular understanding, is there a reason why that it sort of has two aspects, that the gates of heaven will not open and then they will not enter paradise? is it one and the same thing, or is there an indication here? Like in my mind, I'm thinking the gates of heaven not opening is because when one has the pride that, or doesn't accept the imams, doesn't accept the imams because of the pride, then by default they also will not accept those the dais and the hujjats that the imam has placed to be like as if the gates to heaven. Which I think, if that is the case, that to me is very interesting, that there's a gates of heaven have to be opened, which allows to enter paradise. So would that be the correct thinking about the word gates here?
Absolutely. And let me give you 2 examples of the gates of the heaven. One, and both are these: I am the city of knowledge, and Ali is the gate of the city. That shows at the respected time of the Natiqeen, Imam AZIZ is the gate to the paradise. At the respected time of the Imams, the Hujjatan are the gates to the heaven of the Imam. And at the time when Hujjat, peers are teaching, the Dais are the gates to the Ilm and the paradise of the Hujjatan. So you are correct in that assumption. Yes.
Thank you. And if I may also make a comment on one of the previous comments about why rely on previous dais and hujjat work when we have the imam. And I think there is a point there, meaning that the knowledge should always be fresh. So we should also seek out the knowledge of the current time. But at the same time, I think we should also not downplay our previous literature, because our imam has also mentioned both privately in the firmans and publicly in speeches, for example, to say that a passage of a millennium has not diminish the relevance of Pir Nasir Khusro, for example. So when the imams have told us to study the works of Dais, then that should be at least a foundational works for us to understand, which is why we also look to the previous literature to get a better understanding of what Tawil is, so we can recognize it perhaps when the Tawil comes today from the imam, we won't be missing it. So you spoke about not missing that knowledge, which we should be familiar with the previous to know what the, like you said, this is what we got from beforehand. So yeah, that was just a comment. And then if you can make a comment about the question about the Quran Kareem and Hakim.
Okay, so I wanted to make a comment on your comment. In 1968, in 2 Faramin to the back then association, Ismailia Association, now the Tariqa Board, in Karachi and Mumbai both in the same month, Imam had given them the guidance by saying, you must find the ilm wherever you can find in our literature and seek that ilm in its original language. And therefore we can see IIS has published over now 101 books on the Talimat and the Dawat and the books of the Dais and Hujjatan of the past. If that was not necessary or required, Imam would not have put millions and millions of dollars in the IIS, nor he would have hired an army of the scholars and writers and interpreters to translate those books in English. So your comment, yes, we need the fresh interpretation according to the time. And therefore, you were presented with the Tawil of the time, our current time, and the Tawil of the past. Both examples were presented to you today. And with Imam's mercy and Imam's help and Imam's nur and guidance, today, those mu'mineen who are with the light of the Imam, true guidance in ilm of the Imam, are also included in the helping the Jamaat interpret the Quran and its concept. And here I have a farman on your screen that if you study the Quran Sharif, this concept will become well known to you and through you to the Jamaat at large. See, we have all this Faramin and guidance so clearly if we read and pay attention to it. So thank you for comment. And your last question. There are three calling when we call Quran. Quran Kareem, Quran Hakim, and Quran Majid. There are many places where you will find our dais and the Arif Zaman have talked about this. First, let's talk about what is the meaning of Quran Kareem. Kareem, the merciful. So first stage of the Quran is Quran Kareem. Those who read the Quran blesses them and have the mercy on their soul just because they were reciting the Quran. Then Quran also tells us that there is the wisdom and the batin of the Quran. And those who understand the Quran Kareem becomes Quran Hakim for them. And they are able to learn and have the hikmat, the wisdom out of the Quran for them. So now there are two categories of people, those who only read the Quran. So to them, Quran is Quran Kareem. Then there are second category of people who read the Quran as a Quran Kareem, also extract the hikmat, the wisdom, the tawil, the batin out of the Quran. For them is Quran Hakim, not for the first one, for the second one. And then there is a third category of the Mu'mineen, in the example Arifin, in the example Hujjatan, Dayan. For them, in the Quran itself says, no one can touch the Quran Majid. Quran Majid, the guarded book in the sacred sanctuary, Hazira Quds. No one can touch their Quran, but the one who has been purified by the nur of the Imam. In example, Arif or Arif Kamil, then they are the one who touches that high sacred guarded Quran in the Imam Zaman, because they are one with the Imam. They have been purified by the Nur Imam, and they have been guided by the Imam Zaman. So third one is only can be touched by the purified one, the Al-Muttaqeen. So those are the three stages of the Quran. G.
Are you able to take any more? I don't think there are any more questions. ALWAAZ?
I can take one more if there are any questions.
Okay, somebody has just asked about, what about hearing music during zikr? As if I'm hearing zikr with music, but it's out of this world, but can't connect to any earthly musical instruments. I don't get the question actually, but I'm just reading it out.
I got it. I understand the question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. All right, so let me show you that. And I had that on my screen just a minute ago. I'm looking for word, the Surah Israfil. So I can show the music of the Israfil in the Ibadat. And here it is. Okay. So here on your screen, you can see the ringing of the airs due to the Surah Israfil. And the word I used was the word trumpet, beagle, which is a musical instrument. So there is a time and a place where a music could be heard, but not understood by everyone. Those who are with the ilm, and ilm. Ilm teaches us what to make of those sounds. So when Surah Israfil is blown, as you can see on your screen, it will come as the ringing of your ears. A trumpet, a beagle is played, a musical sound. And that also starts very low sound of a background music and becomes louder and louder and louder. It's called Surah Israfil, the blowing of the trumpet, the playing of the beagle, the ringing of the air, the voice of the Surah Israfil, the spark of this Nure Mujarrad. So many different terms our Dais and Pir have given to us. Absolutely. Great question, and it was connected to today's subject.
Thank you. Okay, one question. Okay. Said he Tusi said he does not follow the Hudi din as it is not relevant, as there is no Hudi din now due to Maulana Sultan Muhammad Shah. So why should we follow very old Dai? We are followers of Imam of the time. Can you explain, Aziz sir, please?
Absolutely. Do you like to follow the Farman of the Imam Zaman? And I hope your answer is yes. Your understanding that there is no more Hudud-e-Din at this time of Qiyamah is correct. There are no more physical Hudud-e-Din with title today. And that was the Farman or the understanding of the Farman of the Imam Zaman of the time, Imam Aka Sultan Muhammad Shah, Salawatullah Alayhi, may my soul be sacrificed to their Imam. Then Hazir Imam in Atlanta and in Portugal, and many other indirect Faramin within last 50 years, 65 years now, have said that you are my Dai, and you know Dai are part of Hudud-e-Din. You like to follow the Imam's Farman? Follow this Farman. You are my Dais. And then he says, have you seen what our Dais of the past were like? The Dais have the complete knowledge of the Tariqah and have the spiritual enlightenment. This is the Farman Imam has alluded to in Atlanta. Have you seen what our Dais of the past look like? If there are no more Hudud-e-Zahir, I accept that 100% according to the Farman. But Hudud-e-Din-e-Batin never goes away. May I have a permission to give you an example? I don't know where you are, if you are in Americas, and it is only 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun is out. And if I ask you, is there a moon and a star on the heaven? You can answer no, or you can answer yes. They both will be correct. No, I don't see it. Yes, I don't see it because of the bright light of the sun. I do not see the moon and the star. But the moon and the star are still present. Would you agree with me? That moon and star are still there. We do not see it because of the bright light of the sun. This is the time of the Qiyamah. The sun, the light of the Nur of the Imam of the time is shining so hard, so bright that we do not see the Hudud-e-Din, a batin, in the example of the moon and the star. Shall I get Subhanallah and Alhamdulillah to that? Ji.
Thank you so much, ALWAAZ. I think we've come to the end of the session. You know, I think most of the questions have been responded. So we would just like to give you some dua and our immense thank you so much for this very enlightening wa'az. We have all got a lot out of this talk. May Mawla grant you good health, inner strength, peace, happiness, lots of barakah. And may Mawla grant you immense strength and inspiration to continue this wonderful seva in sharing your knowledge. Mawla ilm ne gnan mein gano gano vadaro kare. Hakikati samajh diye. Mawla hamesha anje sathe diye. Mawla ibadat ne bandgi mein agar vadare. Mawla ke seva karan ji himmat, shakti ane prerna bakshe. Mawla iman didar nasib kare. Shukr alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Ya Ali Madad, Ya Ali Madad.
Mawla Ali Madad, Ya Ali. See you next week, inshallah.
Ya Ali Madad.
Can we stop the recording?
Ya Ali Madad.